Hi, it's Alex. Today I want to talk about gluten-free food and gluten-free eating, and I want to talk about some mistakes that people make in how they think about it and how it may be harming their health. Just to give you a little background, the whole concept of eating gluten-free arose because of celiac disease, which is a relatively uncommon condition, but people with celiac, if they eat even a tiny amount of gluten, they suffer pretty severe consequences. It can take days to get back to normal. I know a couple people with this condition, and it is very unpleasant. I am very grateful that I do not have this condition. Nowadays, though, gluten-free eating and gluten-free foods have become a bit of a trend, and there are a lot of people out there who don't have celiac disease, and they don't even have any sort of medical sensitivity to gluten, but they just believe that eating gluten-free is somehow healthier. And what I want to communicate in this video is that this is not the case. It is not true that something is automatically healthier just because it's gluten-free. And also, eating gluten-free can restrict you from relatively healthy foods that, whenever you cut out healthy foods, you're making it a lot more difficult to get good nutrition. And so I want to give some reasons of why this is. And I want to start by talking about wheat. Wheat has been kind of maligned. I kind of have some biases against it myself. My dad happens to be allergic to wheat. He is not gluten intolerant, but he has an allergy to wheat specifically. So I grew up eating all sorts of alternative grains, and I love them. But wheat is pretty nutritious, and I think a lot of people don't realize this. So I want to read off some nutritional facts for you. This is coming from nutritionvalue.org, and it's just recycling or repackaging the USDA nutrient database data. So for whole wheat flour, whole grains are usually healthier than refined grains. For whole wheat flour, 1/4 cup of it has 102 calories, it has 4 grams of protein, and it has 3.2 grams of fiber. It also has quite a lot of micronutrients, minerals, and B vitamins in particular. This amount of protein, 4 grams of protein per 1/4 cup, is pretty good. If you go through different grains and you look at the amount of protein per 1/4 cup, a lot of them only have 3 grams or less. So whole wheat is really like a winning grain from like a protein standpoint. Even refined white wheat flour is pretty nutritious and pretty high in protein, and this is something that a lot of people don't realize. A 1/4 cup of refined wheat flour that is unenriched, it doesn't have any vitamins added to it, it still has 3.2 grams of protein in it, and it has 0.8 grams of dietary fiber. So there's a reason why wheat is so popular. There's a reason why wheat is such a dominant grain in our society, especially in Western society. But it's not just the West. Like China has a big tradition of using wheat too. Wheat is popular all around the world. So if you're cutting out gluten, which is in wheat, you're going to be cutting out this good option of this grain that has a lot of good things about it. And you're not just cutting out wheat. You're cutting out a number of related grains. So all of the ancestral forms of wheat, many of which are actually healthier than wheat, so spelt, einkorn, emmer, khorasan, which is also called kamut, those are all wheat ancestors, and they all have gluten. So if you have a gluten intolerance, you have to avoid all of them. But it's not just that. You also have to avoid rye and barley. Rye and barley also have a number of health benefits. Rye is very high in fiber, it's good for your digestion. Barley, again too, it's high in fiber and it has like a lot of resistant starch. And there are a lot of reasons you might want to eat these things. So when you're cutting out this whole class of grains, it makes it a lot harder to eat healthy, especially when it comes to your carbohydrates. And I want to talk about what companies do. A lot of companies that make gluten-free products, they try to replicate the appearance, texture, and flavor of wheat flour and wheat products, but not the nutritional profile. And this is pretty dangerous because wheat has a pretty good nutritional profile. And I want to highlight a company that I tend to like, but they make a gluten-free flour that I think is really bad. and it's an example of what goes wrong with gluten-free products. And that is King Arthur. I love King Arthur flour. I'm a serious baker, and they make some of the best flour out there just for regular flour, bread flour, and so on. It's high quality. But their gluten-free flour leaves a lot to be desired. I want to read the ingredient list of this off. It has rice flour and tapioca starch as a flour blend as the first ingredient, then potato starch, then whole grain brown rice flour, and then it has added vitamins and minerals. So there's only one whole ingredient in this, which is the whole grain brown rice flour, and it is the third ingredient, or fourth if you consider the first two that are sort of grouped together. So the main things in this are rice flour, tapioca starch, and potato starch. Now, one thing you'll notice right off the bat, two of these things are refined starches. This is basically an ultra-processed food. You may have heard in the news a lot lately about how bad ultra-processed foods are, how they contribute to things like type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome and all that whole family of problems. And this product, this gluten-free all-purpose flour blend, is an ultra-processed food, and it has these big culprits in it, these refined starches. These are not good for you because they're devoid of micronutrients, they're devoid of fiber, and when you eat them, your body tends to break them down and digest them and absorb them very, very quickly. Much more quickly than even regular refined white wheat flour. So right there, this food is deceptively bad for your health relative to other white flours. Even the rice flour involved. Rice is a very high glycemic index food. That means it is digested very quickly, it is absorbed very quickly. So the main ingredient, the first ingredient in this blend, is something that is not very high in protein, not very high in fiber, and it's kind of, I'm not going to say it's nutritionally empty, it's better than those refined starches, but it's not what you want to make the sort of cornerstone of your diet, and it's a big, big downgrade from even white wheat flour. So this whole product is just not very good for you, and I want to read off the nutrition facts of it. This is 3 tablespoons of it, so that's a little less than a quarter cup. That has 110 calories in it, so it's more calorie dense than regular white wheat flour. It has only 1 gram of protein. This is terrible. This is terrible. So per calorie, it has 1/4 the protein of whole wheat flour and less than 1/3 the protein of white wheat flour. This is really bad. And you want to know how much dietary fiber it has? 0. It has no fiber whatsoever. This is terrible. Most people don't eat enough fiber. This is just, this is how you wreck your health, eating stuff like this. It's how you get obesity, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, fatty liver disease. I could go on and on. You'll get heart disease. It's really bad for your health to eat stuff like this. And this is really unfortunate because King Arthur markets this as a kind of alternative, a substitute for your main all-purpose flour. So if you're making this a staple in your household, this is not good for you. And I want to make clear there are alternative ways to do this. And I want to highlight a company that is doing a much better job. This is another company that makes high-quality flour, Bob's Red Mill. And Bob's Red Mill also makes a gluten-free blend. And I want to read off both of the ingredients and the nutritional facts of this. And I want to explain to you how it's different and why I think this is a much better blend to bake with and to eat. Sorry, I'm going to have to get a little close to read this off. So the ingredients in this are garbanzo bean flour, that's chickpea flour, potato starch, tapioca flour, whole grain sorghum flour, and fava bean flour. So okay, this is not a perfect product. It still contains potato starch, which is an ultra-processed ingredient. But it does have these protein-rich bean flours, and accordingly, it has much better nutritional profile. So a quarter cup of this has 120 calories, it has 3 grams of protein, and it has 4 grams of fiber. This is quite good in terms of the macronutrient profile. It is closer to whole wheat flour. I still want to make clear, I do not buy this blend. I do not bake with it, and I probably will never bake with it. I like to have a high standard. I actually just go straight to the raw ingredients. If you go into my cupboard in the kitchen, I keep besan flour, which is chickpea flour, and I bake with that. I use mung bean flour. I recently got my hands on urad flour from matpe beans or urad beans. So this is some esoteric stuff. There are all sorts of great gluten-free flours out there. All of these are gluten-free. Another one is almond flour. All of these flours are much higher in protein than this blend. Per quarter cup, chickpea flour has 5 grams of protein. Urad flour has 7 grams. Mung bean flour has 7 grams. Almond flour has 6 grams. So these grains they're not exactly grains. These flours have protein out the wazoo, and they also are much higher in fiber. They're whole foods, basically. Not quite whole because they've been ground up, but they're minimally processed. They are certainly not ultra-processed foods. So this Bob's Red Mill flour is certainly better, but it's not how I like to eat. If you are gonna eat gluten-free, either because you have to or just because you want to or you notice some sort of benefits, like if you have some other sort of gluten intolerance that's not as severe as celiac, you really need to watch this stuff, because the overwhelming majority of gluten-free products on the market are made more like that bad example of the flour I showed earlier in this video. They have almost no protein in them and almost no fiber. They're all refined starches. And the big ones that you see are tapioca, potato, rice, and corn. Those are not the highest protein food sources out there. There are tons and tons of gluten-free grains and also pseudo-cereals that are higher in protein, and I want to highlight some of them. They are oat, which that can have a little bit of a problem with gluten contamination sometimes, so some people need to be careful with that. Teff is a great one. Teff is a grain popular in Ethiopia, used to make this bread called injera. I use teff in baking regularly, and I love it, and it is very high in protein. Even higher in protein are pseudo-cereals: amaranth, quinoa, and buckwheat. Those are 3 great pseudo-cereals. They are not grasses, they're not technically grains, but they behave a lot like grains. They have these starchy seeds. They also happen to be very high in protein, and the protein tends to be pretty high quality, so it has a good balance of amino acids. So those are really great flours to work with, and they each have different properties. I can talk about that in a later video. The point is, if you're going to eat gluten-free, you want to seek out these protein-rich foods, whether you're doing it for baking or whether you're looking at like packaged, pre-made baked goods. Those are the ones where you need to be really, really careful. You also see this with pasta. There are gluten-free pastas made out of all sorts of material, and some of them are terrible. Some of them are really low protein, low fiber. They're like ultra-processed foods. But there are others that are made of things like chickpea or soybean that are very high protein and very high fiber. So you want to be aware of this. Gluten-free does not mean healthy. And the products that have been made to emulate the flavor of wheat and the texture of wheat flour, those products are often nutritionally empty. They often are more or less ultra-processed foods that are going to wreck your health if you make them a staple of your diet, if you make them the centerpiece of your diet. You can, however, eat really, really healthy gluten-free foods that actually far surpass wheat in terms of their nutritional profile. So you really need to seek this stuff out. I recommend, how do you do this? If you are buying something gluten-free, look at the label and do 2 things. Read the whole ingredient list. And the second thing, look at the protein and the fiber specifically. If you see less than 3 grams protein per 100 calories or 120 calories, don't buy it. That stuff's going to be kind of junk nutritionally. And similarly, you want a minimum of 1 gram of fiber, ideally more like 2, 3, 4 grams of fiber in that same quantity, that quarter cup. When you're looking at the ingredient list, look for starches. So potato starch, cornstarch, tapioca starch are the main ones that you see. And you want to avoid products that have those. You especially want to avoid products that have them high up on the ingredient list, because that means they're a substantial portion of the blend. Also, just because there's a flour in there as the main ingredient doesn't mean it's good. Rice flour and tapioca flour are not particularly high in protein or fiber. So those are not great flours, and that it's not great to buy products that are using those as the main staple. You want to look for things that have some of those higher protein like ingredients as the main ingredient. So for example, things made of almond flour, buckwheat, quinoa, amaranth. These things tend to be harder to find, they tend to be more expensive, but I really think it's worth paying a little bit more for stuff. Like if you actually look at the price per gram of protein on these different products, you find that some of these products that look more expensive are actually much cheaper per gram of protein. Almond flour is a great example. You think almond flour is expensive because it's like $6 a pound. Well, how much is it per gram of protein? It is actually cheaper than most of those gluten-free blends that have 1 gram of protein per quarter cup. So if you start thinking about it like this, you will make better decisions for your health. So I hope I've shed some light on this issue. I hope that we can put pressure on companies too. Like King Arthur is a great example. I think they could do better. They make great other products, and Bob's Red Mill has proved that you can do a little bit better. I'm still not super thrilled with that blend of theirs. I prefer baking with whole ingredients, and I love experimenting with different grains. But the point is that you could do a lot better than a lot of these companies are doing. I would call on companies to find ways to eliminate all refined starches from their gluten-free products. You don't need them. I've been baking and I never use refined starches. I've been doing this for years. I use all sorts of weird grains. I can make all sorts of gluten-free things. It's doable. I'm not an expert in this stuff. If I can do it, these companies that have like a whole staff to experiment, they can figure it out. We just need to pressure them, and we will pressure them by stopping buying this junk. And this is ultimately going to be really helpful for people with celiac disease because they have the toughest time. They have to eat gluten-free or they suffer severe health consequences, and it's not really fair to them to have to eat this low quality, low protein, low fiber food because it's the only thing on the market. And I want us to think about those people too. So yeah, thank you, and yeah, have a great rest of your day.